Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Jeffrey Epstein Show. I'm your host, Bobbycapucci, and this is Daily Drop number 386. You know, folks, every now and then we come across a story in this case that is absolutely ridiculous. A story that leaves you scratching your head and asking yourself, what in the F did I just read? And there's no shortage of wild people involved in this case. There's no shortage of people who have nothing to do with this case, who try and insert themselves into this case. And tonight, we're going to talk about one of the more absurd claims I have seen throughout this whole entire Jeffrey Epstein case. And folks, that is saying something. We're going to talk about a level of crazy tonight that'll make your head spin. A level of crazy that is almost unbelievable. These people, like the man we're going to discuss tonight, are huge impediments on this case. People that make outlandish claims like the claims made by the person we're going to talk about tonight. Make everybody involved in this case look like crackpots. So the person we're about to talk about, should probably stay in their lane. They should probably worry about all of their other ridiculous conspiracy theories that they're running around talking about. They should probably worry about bringing a case into a courtroom that might actually be heard. And the Moron of the Year award, in the short year that we're in so far, goes to Lin Wood, Mr. Conspiracy Theorist himself. Mr. Jeffrey Epstein still alive. This guy is an absolute hack. 100%, without a doubt, an absolute hack. His whole entire shtick is so unbelievable that I laugh every single time somebody tries to defend this guy. This is a man who is making wild claims all over the place. And I'm not even going to talk about the election or the quote-unquote crack-in or any of that stuff. I'm going to talk about the claims being made about Jeffrey Epstein and the claims being made about John Roberts and Jeffrey Epstein. Folks, I have never heard one single story by one single witness or one single person discuss John Roberts at Jeffrey Epstein's properties. Okay? And your 4chan sources, those aren't real sources, folks, okay? What you're doing is you're feeding your confirmation bias, and it's dangerous. When something is so outlandish, such as John Roberts being on Jeffrey Epstein's island, you should hit the brakes right away and ask yourself, who in the is divulging this information to me? Who is trying to disseminate this information to me? And what are they asking for in return? What sort of subscription are they asking me to purchase? What sort of book are they asking me to buy? What sort of donation can I make to help their case? Anytime I hear outlandish claims like this, anytime I hear a claim that might feed my confirmation bias, I am automatically completely skeptical of it. And this moron, Lin Wood, talking about Jeffrey Epstein still being alive and John Roberts having a relationship with Epstein is beyond the pale ridiculous. This is a man who is absolutely destroyed whatever credibility he has had or would have with this sort of tweet. And before this whole entire situation occurred with the election and these lawyers challenging the election, et cetera, This man was pretty well thought of in legal circles as far as being a lawyer and prosecuting cases and stuff like that. But I'll tell you this much right now. There is less than a 0 chance I would ever hire an attorney like this guy. Are you kidding me right now? Hello, Mr. Crackpot. You're an attorney, and you're going to make all of these wild claims, these outlandish claims. You better have some evidence. You better damn well have some evidence. At the very least, you better have some circumstantial evidence to point at. What are you going to point at? The picture of Jean-Luc Brunel with Epstein and those guys again and act like it's John Roberts? That might work on people who want to feed their confirmation bias, but that's not going to work on us. That's not going to work on the people who are following this case, the people who have tossed tribalism right out the window. This isn't about ideologies or the culture war or anything like that. It's about the truth, and it's about justice. And these people like Lin Wood, swerving into this lane, are muddying the waters, making things harder for these girls to get their justice. Here's an idea, Lin Wood. Why don't you keep these survivors out of your ridiculous, tribalistic political games? You don't know anything about the Jeffrey Epstein case. You don't have any information about this case. You don't know who was at the island. What you have are a couple of 4chan posts. And furthermore, if your specialists are like the one that was provided by Sidney Powell in the other case, some sort of blogger, pro your side kind of content creator, well, you're going to be in for a long, hard, arduous battle because we believe evidence here, my friend. Not wild, outlandish claims. What's next? Bigfoot? The Chupacabra? The Wolfman? Frankenstein? And Godzilla are all coming over and they're having breakfast at your house with Jeffrey Epstein for a poker game? This is how outlandish you sound, Lin Wood. And anybody who supports this shit or picks up on it or who retweets it and thinks it's gospel, you are being gaslit. I don't know how else to say it to you. And I really don't, look, I don't blame the people who have been gaslit by people like Lin Wood and some of these content creators that played on people's hopes and fears to try and cash in. I don't blame the people who got played because confirmation bias is an MF. Everybody wants to feed their confirmation bias. It takes a lot of hard work to not feed that animal and to avoid it. You gotta get comfortable being uncomfortable, folks. And Lin Wood, this dude is batshit crazy. I don't care what side of the aisle you're on. I don't care if you're the most ardent Trump supporter. You should be dismayed that this man would make a comment like this, that this man would come off as such a crackpot. This isn't the kind of guy you want representing you, folks. Are you kidding me right now? See, the thing is, with the Jeffrey Epstein case, you don't need all of those wacky 4chan conspiracy theories. You don't need made-up stories about participants. The real people that were there make it salacious enough. Make it such a crazy case as it is. There's no need for embellishment and inserting people like John Roberts into the story simply to try and score a couple of political points on the backside of it. That shit's going to be met with extreme prejudice, Lin Wood. And you're about to get a little bit of taste of that right here and right now. Our article is from The Independent. Headline, Trump lawyer Lin Wood says Jeffrey Epstein still alive in bizarre conspiracy tweets. The lawyer wrapped up the claim in a conspiracy theory alleging Chief Justice John Roberts killed Justice Antonin Scalia. So, right out of the files of crackpot lunatic shit, here we go. The author of the article, Greg Graziosi. Look, those are wild-ass claims, right? Chief Justice Scalia had heart problems, he had issues, he was a bit older. There's no evidence that anyone killed Judge Scalia, and if there is evidence, let's see it. Again, If you're going to make these claims, the onus is on you to provide that evidence. And if you don't have that evidence, then you should probably shut your fat yap. A conspiracy theory touting lawyer championing Donald Trump's election fraud claims also believes that notorious child sex trafficker Jeffrey Epstein is still alive. And right there, right away, I roll my eyes and shake my head. Because you know that there are going to be legions of people that are still caught up in the tribalism world, that are caught up in the left-right paradigm, that are going to lock onto this and take it as gospel. They're going to take it as the truth, as canon information. But we know that's not the case. And we know how dangerous it is. And that's why when I don't have evidence directly linking you folks to something, or there's not circumstantial evidence to back it up, you'll hear me say, look, I don't have any evidence for this, but now if Lin Wood would have made the post, the tweet, and he would have said, I think Jeffrey Epstein's alive, and I think John Roberts has something to do with it. Well, all right, then that's you're asserting that. You're saying, in my opinion, I think that this is occurring. That's not what occurred here. This man was adamant. Okay, Jeffrey Epstein's alive, and John Roberts was an associate of Epstein's on the island. Literally zero proof of any of these claims. And he didn't post a link to any of that, not even a link to a 4chan message board or thread or to someone's blog or anything. This is the problem with this kind of garbage. Look, if you want to score political points and you want to look for political hatch jobs, that's your business. But if you try and swerve into this lane, the Jeffrey Epstein case lane, and you try and muddy the waters and you try and make things murkier, my friend, your wheels will pop and you will be met with double barrel loaded shotguns of scorn. This case is hard enough. This case has been being pursued for long enough, and justice has been avoided for way too long for somebody like Lin Wood to interject themselves with dumbass, stupid, outlandish comments such as these. Lin Wood, a lawyer who has represented the Kenosha shooter Kyle Rittenhouse and who has taken up Mr. Trump's claims that massive election fraud cost him the 2020 election, made the claim on Twitter without providing any evidence. And that's the kind of world we live in nowadays, right? People just fire off all kinds of outlandish claims without even circumstantial evidence to back it up or a source to back it up. That's great if that's your opinion. That's cool. I respect everybody's opinion, even if I don't agree with it or if I find it outlandish. I'm not always right. Hell, I'm hardly ever right. But you can't run around and try and shoot your opinion off to people and then tell them that it's gospel, that it's fact. It's very irresponsible for content creators or somebody like Lin Wood with a bunch of followers to do something like that, because people are going to take it as gospel. Again, confirmation bias. People want this shit to be true so bad that they're willing to engage in cognitive dissonance to make it so in their own mind. Epstein died in prison in 2019 after he was charged with sex trafficking and conspiracy to traffic minors for sex. Mr. Wood's latest bizarre statement was made as part of a layer cake of conspiracy theories. While he was advancing a theory that Chief Justice John Roberts had something to do with the death of Antonin Scalia, who died in 2016. This is some crackpot shit. And I know that there's some people out there listening that probably ascribe to some of this stuff, right? That probably believe some of the stuff that's being peddled by these content creators that have latched on to the QAnon conspiracy theory. And you're probably mad at me right now for bringing this up and putting this dude on blast. But folks, sometimes hard truths must be heard. And I guess if anyone has to be the messenger, it might as well be me. You all know where I'm at. I'm certainly no fan of the other side. I ain't no fan of Biden or his group of merry thieves. Just like I'm no fan of the Trump administration or Lin Wood or anybody else who would seek to make this case harder than it already is. And if you're here at this podcast, and if you're listening to this podcast, you already know what time it is. You already know that it's time to rage against the whole machine. It's time for all of these people, left and right, to be held accountable. And somebody like Lin Wood firing off from the side of his neck about stuff he obviously has no idea about is beyond the pale of ridiculous, and it is the actions of a drowning man reaching out for any sort of life preserver. I am fully aware of the onslaught of attacks being made against me based on my revelations about Chief Justice John Roberts. What revelations? There are none, okay? I'm sorry, folks. There is no evidence, zero, squat, gats, none, about John Roberts being involved with Jeffrey Epstein. And if you point me to a 4chan post or an 8chan post or any of that other nonsense, I'll put my head through the wall. That is not a source, okay? That's some guy sitting around in his drawers, pounding away on his keyboard on 4chan. Yeah, we're going to have a great time today. Yeah. I need real sources. I need real evidence, not assertions. Before attacking me, maybe fair-minded people would first ask Roberts to tell the truth, Mr. Lin tweeted on Thursday. Or ask Jeffrey Epstein. He is alive. And you see, that's where I get involved in this. I was more than willing to let this guy run around and act like a moron and not call him out and let him do whatever he wanted to do. Not my business. Not my monkey. Not my circus. But now, when you swerve into our lane with a blunt hanging out of your mouth and you sideswipe us, what, you don't think I'm stopping the whip, hopping out and extracting you and having a word? My guy. Welcome to the Thunderdome. This Lin Wood character and his ridiculous comments are some of the most, and I mean this truly, folks, some of the most ridiculous comments I have heard throughout our whole entire time together here on this podcast. What is it now, 450 straight days or something? The most ridiculous assertions coming from this guy. This is just, this is Bigfoot level conspiracy theory shit. This isn't even based in any kind of truth. This is just some guy who's like, all right, this sounds good. We know Jeffrey Epstein's a sick bastard. Let's tie him to Jeffrey Epstein. So irresponsible, so ridiculous, but so expected from a hack like Lin Wood. Epstein's death was ruled a suicide, allegedly, and Mr. Scalia died of natural causes at age 79. Mr. Lin's conspiratorial tweets began on Wednesday when he questioned why Justice Roberts was discussing Mr. Scalia's successor prior to his death, insinuating Justice Roberts knew something about Justice Scalia's impending death. Oh, cryptic. Oh, no. So it's not odd that they'd be discussing the Chief Justice of the Supreme Court would be discussing a replacement for a man who's 80 with some health conditions? And look, I always liked Scalia. He's Italian. I thought it was a big deal for my heritage, for a man who is Italian-American to attain such a high spot in the Supreme Court. And if I ever thought that there was anything untowards about this man's death, I would have been screaming from the rooftops. The only people talking like that are people like Lin Wood, who want the pitchforks and the torches to continue to fight each other. That's what this guy's doing. This is red meat for the base. This is to get the base riled up, and ready to go for whatever they have planned on January 6th. That's what's going on with Lin Wood. And it's very transparent. The guy's a joker, and I think it's really sad that a lot of good people are being gaslit by somebody like him. A lot of good people who want this kind of stuff to be true so bad that they're being gaslit by this man and others like him, other grifters, other content creators who latched on to this QAnon shit from the very beginning and have made a boatload of money. And they've continued to kick the can down the road every time a deadline would pass. Oh, trust the plan, trust Jeff Sessions, trust this one, trust that one. No, I don't trust any of you, okay? And I certainly don't trust Bigfoot lover himself, Lin Wood. Justice Scalia was nearly 80 years old, with a history of high blood pressure and heart issues. And that's what I was talking about. The guy had underlying conditions. Sometimes you die at 80 years old, folks. I know that's breaking news and a spoiler. But when you get that old, shit goes south very quickly sometimes, especially if you already have issues. After pondering Justice Roberts' motives, he then asked if the Chief Justice was a member of any club or cabal requiring minor children as an initiation fee. What? I understand the point you're trying to make here, Lin Wood, but you're really making everybody look like quacks. And you're certainly making the guy that you're supposed to be representing, Donald J. Trump, look absolutely terrible for ever being in bed with you. We're not talking about somebody who's making a legal argument here. We're not talking about somebody who's, coming to the table and bringing some evidence of what they're talking about. This dude is irresponsibly firing off tweets to his thousands and thousands of Twitter followers who then pick up the baton and advance the bullshit narrative that this dude's serving up. And it does nothing but muddy the waters. It does nothing but make this job more difficult. So here's an idea. Worry about the Kraken, or whatever it is you're calling your investigation into fraud, and leave this shit to people who really know what they're doing. Justice Roberts has not publicly replied to the tweet. He then went on to allege that Justice Roberts arranged for the illegal adoption of 2 children from Epstein, claiming Epstein knows pedophilia. Folks, I don't even know where to begin with this kind of stuff, okay? I really don't know where to begin challenging Lin Wood. Here's what I'll say about it. Let's see the evidence. It's on you to show us this evidence that you supposedly are asserting that that's out there. It's an absolute joke. And I've seen a bunch of people on the right run for the hills after these tweets. Trump supporters, even other people that are into this QAnon stuff. Nobody wants to be associated with a guy running around talking this kind of nonsense. He can't even say it was tongue-in-cheek because it's not. We all know that he really believes this. This guy believes that Jeffrey Epstein is still alive, folks. And of all the things I know in this case, one thing I am pretty damn sure of is that Epstein is no longer alive, okay? Mr. Wood is a believer in the QAnon conspiracy theory and has made appearances beside fellow lawyer and Trump loyalist Sidney Powell. Well, that's neither here nor there for our discussion, okay? That's not why I'm talking about Lin Wood. I don't care about that, right? If they want to have an investigation into the election, great. No, it has nothing to do with me. I have nothing to do with any of that nonsense. I'm not, great. Let me know when you guys have the results or some evidence, one way or the other. But when it comes to this case, and Lin Wood using it as a cudgel to try and beat down his political opponents, that's not going to stand. And he's going to be met with the same vitriol that everyone else is met with on the podcast when they try their shit. What, you folks thought I wasn't going to be addressing this? Come on now. You know I love to pull things from the files of the absurd. He has called on Georgians to boycott the upcoming runoff elections, which will determine which party controls the Senate, after alleging the state's Republican governor, Brian Kemp, is Republican in name only and is complicit in the massive voter fraud alleged by Mr. Trump. So we need to see all of that evidence if he's going to keep talking about it, right? I mean, let's see it. And as far as the runoff goes, if you're not from Georgia, I think you should shut your mouth about that election and let the people of Georgia decide. And that goes for both sides of the aisle. How many hundreds of millions are getting poured in there right now? It's a travesty, it's gross, and honestly, I'm offended by it. Republican officials in the state have attempted to counteract Mr. Wood's calls for boycotting the election over fears that his conspiracy theories will curb turnout among Republican voters. They deserve that. I hate to tell you folks, but they deserve it at this point. The Republican Party as an entity is an absolute joke. Not like the Democratic Party's much better, all right? They're not. About equal and about how much of a joke they are. But the Republicans especially right now. What a bunch of limp-wristed, wet-noodled morons. Mr. Wood also suggested that supporters of Mr. Trump stock up on Second Amendment supplies ahead of the inauguration of Joe Biden. Well, I think it's a good idea for all Americans to stock up on bullets and supplies. I don't care who the president is. You saw what happened recently with the lockdowns. You see what's going on in England right now and elsewhere, California. So that's some good advice. That's something I can actually agree with this moron. I think everyone should, if you're someone who has legally owned firearms, load them up. Make sure you got bullets, folks. We're in a crazy-ass world, and we don't know what's going on, what's coming next. And the responsibility falls on you, and you alone, to protect your family when them chips are down. So whatever it is that you use to protect your family, make sure you have it on hand. Because society is really fragile right now. And when you have provocateurs like this Lin Wood on the right and others on the left that are trying to sow seeds of dismay and trying to make the left and the right and the pitchforks and the torches and neighbors hate each other with this kind of crazy outlandish bullshit, you gotta be prepared for anything. And the only thing I could agree with this idiot in the whole entire spiel he had going on here was that last part. Make sure you have supplies. And whatever those supplies are as far as survival, make sure you have them on hand. 10 days worth, 14 days worth, whatever you can afford. Because with wild people like Lin Wood on the right and other wild people on the left that are doing the same exact thing and have been doing the same thing for the last 4 years, mind you, we're entering a real dangerous time. So it's always a good idea to be prepared, right? What's the worst that happens? You have some food that you eat eventually anyway? Let's be honest. But people like Lin Wood, folks, in my suggestion is to be very cautious of anyone selling something like this. Anyone selling you anything that's going to really give you a stomach full of your confirmation bias, I definitely suggest that you double check to make sure that there's some evidence that goes along with it, to make sure that there's some circumstantial evidence that goes along with it. Because we are in the era and the time of the gaslighting operations, and it's going on all around us. Hard to find real truth. Hard to find somebody you can trust. And Lin Wood most certainly is not that guy. So I hope Lin Wood has a great time at dinner with Bigfoot, Chupacabra, the Wolfman, and Frankenstein. The rest of us, well, we'll be over here in reality. If you'd like to contact me, you can do that at Bobbycapucci at protonmail.com. That's BOBBYCAPUCCI at protonmail.com. You can also find me on Twitter at BOBBY_CAPUCCI. All of the links that go with this episode can be found in the description box. All right, folks. I hope you all had an amazing start to your year. And I hope that moving forward, that this is the best one yet for all of us. I'll be back tomorrow, and we'll pick back up where we left off.